Throughout history, there have been some crazy political movements. There was the leader of the Taiping Rebellion in China, who thought he was the younger brother of the big man JC. And in keeping with the religious theme, you also have the endless number of cults that have popped in and subsequently out of existence. Aum Shinrikyo, Jonestown, the Branch Davidians, Heaven's Gate, among many others. There is no end to the sheer amount of madness humanity is capable of producing. But since the destruction of the state-organised communist internationals at the end of the Cold War, the realm of crazy ideologies and conspiracy theorists has been largely dominated by the political right. People like Alex Jones and QAnon, legitimised by conservative populist figures like Trump, Jordan Peterson, Dennis Prager, Ben Shapiro, etc., etc. And in my mind, that's not fair. Where are our crazies? And to that end, I am making a short-form semi-satirical mini-series about history's craziest communists. Because every group has their nutcases, and the left is definitely no exception. And in my opinion, it's our duty as a society to not let the right have all the fun. I mean, think about all the crazy conspiracies they have. They have secret Nazi superweapons, moon bases, the Illuminati, the Clintons being lizards, although I'm actually inclined to believe that last one, given the evidence we have. And what does the left get? Right, nothing. In any case, today we're going to talk about one of the biggest memes in political history, an organisation and theory so outlandish it formed its own satirical revival movement of which I was a member. Today we are going back in time to the early 20th century, the age of catastrophe where war, economic implosion and anti-colonial revolutions swept across the world to the nation of Argentina. This is the story about a splinter group of Latin American communists who once commanded a strong presence throughout all of Central and South America. The Fourth International Posadist, led by a charismatic yet tyrannical, certifiable madman, Homero Romulo Cristalli Francelli, known more commonly by his pen name, Juan Posadas. But before all that, let's indulge in some shameless capitalism. It gives me great pleasure to say that this video is sponsored by Atlas VPN, and right now, Atlas VPN is running an insane Christmas deal. Now you can get Atlas VPN Premium for just $1.70 per month, plus 6 months extra with a 30-day money-back guarantee. It's the best Atlas VPN offer of the year, so be quick and get your deal by clicking the link in the video description below, and the pinned comment. But, suppose you need more convincing. VPNs are the first line of defense when browsing online, and Atlas VPN has a big focus on your security. It blocks ads, malware, malicious links, and trackers while notifying you when someone tries to steal your data. It keeps your Google searches private and untracked, ensuring you surf the net safely. And with just one subscription, you can protect all of your devices. Combine that with today's special offer and you simply have the best VPN deal on the market right now, and those savings don't stop there. By changing server locations and hunting around, Atlas gives you the opportunity to get the best deals from all over the world. Plus, this location changing feature lets you access geo-locked content on all your favorite services like Netflix. And trust me, as an Australian and an anime fan, this right here is the biggest factor for me. So go out and get Atlas VPN Premium for just $1.70 a month plus 6 months extra with a 30-day money-back guarantee. As I said before, it's Atlas VPN's best offer of the year, so get your deal by clicking the link in the video description below. Right now, get it. Go get it. It's great. Anyway, thank you for the sponsor. On to the video. Alrighty. Now, I should preface this by saying that the full history of this movement can be found in a rather excellent book, but it is a 300-page volume describing the intricacies of party life inside a Latin American communist organization, so it's not exactly light reading. I'll plug it at the end of the video though, should you be interested. But this is, as mentioned, a YouTube video. You're here for the fun stuff. So let's talk about the fun stuff. But first, as always, we've got to have a history lesson. After Lenin died and Stalin rose to power, there was a ferocious struggle in the communist world. Up to this point, the revolutionary movement had been united, more or less, under Lenin, with other movements being crushed either by the Soviets themselves or an existing capitalist government. But like all left-wing organizations, the moment it got above a certain size or there was a leadership crisis, the party split. That's going to be a theme going forward, by the way. Leon Trotsky, a titan of leftist political thought, widely published academic, and chief commissar of the Red Army during the Revolution, was the natural successor to Lenin and had widespread support throughout the party. The people, and especially the intelligentsia, were in favour of his assuming the role. However, Stalin, despite his undereducated criminal background, was very intelligent and supremely devious. He had outsmarted and outmaneuvered him and all of his allies. Being General Secretary meant that he handled all the bureaucracy of the Soviet Union, while Lenin and Trotsky were off playing hero. And as we know, when a government is centralized to the extent that the Soviet Union is, that position ultimately carries supreme power. Thus, after Lenin died and Trotsky made his play for power, he discovered that the entire Soviet state apparatus was filled with Stalin supporters, and so he was expelled from the party and exiled from the country. His supporters, who weren't smart enough to go with him, would later be rounded up and shot during Stalin's great purges throughout the 30s. Everybody is on! Shots! Out on his own and left to his own devices, Trotsky fled to Mexico, where he continued his theorizing and writing, while making speeches and organizing across Latin America, resulting in the founding of the Fourth Communist International, to stand opposed to what Trotsky described as the degenerated workers' state, a centralized bureaucratic nightmare of counter-revolutionary terror, Stalinism, as it was called. Though in reality he was just simply a different flavor of authoritarian communist, and was primarily butthurt that it wasn't him doing the purging and industrializing instead of Stalin. However, the key distinction ideologically is that Trotsky believed in world revolution, war communism, and the furthering of the revolution at all costs, a state of permanent revolution as he called it, while Stalin wanted to sit in Eastern Europe consolidating his power and rapidly expanding the Soviet state, with the goal of building socialism in one country. Now, the reason I've had to explain all this is that it laid the groundwork for the ideology of our protagonists, while leading to a huge divide in the global left. And due to his presence in Mexico, the largest hotbed of Trotskyism, as it became to be known, was in South America. And it would go on for long after old mate Leon got an ice pick lobotomy courtesy of Mother Russia. In fact, it continues to this very day, with even Hugo Chavez claiming to be a Trotskyist, although this claim is widely disputed by the Trotskyists for obvious reasons. It was this world that our protagonist, Homero Francelli, inhabited. Born to Italian migrants in the impoverished slums of Buenos Aires, one of 9 siblings, he lived a desperate existence throughout his early life, constantly malnourished and forced to fend for himself. He never received a formal education, instead learning as he went, doing odd jobs ranging from construction, manual labour, deliveries, anything that paid for the next meal. However, growing up in the streets of South America doing such varied work meant he also developed a natural gift in another area: football, the most practiced religion in South America. In Argentina, doubly so. Argentina goes hard on football. In fact, he actually made it to the first team for Estudiantes La Plata, one of Argentina's oldest clubs. But this was the era before serious professionalism, and so he really couldn't make a living playing football. But it did make his name widely known in the community. By the 1930s, he had ultimately become a shoemaker, and had learned to read and become politically active. And as socialist fervour swept through South America along with anti-imperialist sentiment, he joined a local syndicalist movement and formed a very militant shoemakers and leatherworkers union in the city of Cordoba. If you don't know what syndicalists are, Monty Python covered us quite well.
We're an anarcho-syndicalist commune. We take it in turns to act as a sort of executive officer for the week. Yes.
Now, all of this seems relatively normal, but this background should give you an idea of the man that we are dealing with. He is a natural leader. He played sports at the top level, formed a militant trade union, spoke passionately at public meetings. He had guts, charisma, and drive. But he also had no formal education, no theoretical knowledge, and no comprehensive understanding of political ideology, socio-economic structure, or any of the high-level decision-making processes required to truly carry out his proclaimed mission. In fact, he had no higher education whatsoever. Nevertheless, as Leon Trotsky's ideology spread throughout South America, Homero was caught up in it, joining the Argentinian Trotskyist movement. With his charisma and leadership, along with his public profile, he climbed through the ranks quickly until he eventually became one of the most influential communist voices in South America, organizing unions and revolutionary militias all throughout the continent, eventually rising to be the leader of the Latin America Bureau of the Fourth International, a very prestigious post. And at the time, it was common, as it was for Trotsky and Lenin, to use pen names when conducting business inside communist organizations, and so Homero Francelli became Juan Posadas. However, there was a problem. It was clear that the world revolution promised by Marx, Lenin, and Trotsky championed by the various guerrilla struggles even now underway across the globe, was not materializing. This resulted in some good old-fashioned leftist infighting. Half the Trotskyists in the Fourth International wanted to pursue reforms, integrating into the mainstream left-wing parties, while supporting ongoing revolutions backed by Moscow, while the orthodox Trotskyists didn't want to lose their special snowflake status as the only so-called real communist organization, and so, after bickering, infighting, and party political maneuvering, the Fourth International once again split off into different parties. Again, the split-off party split again. If you want a good summary of Trotskyists, I must again recommend Monty Python, specifically Life of Brian. Roll clip.
The only people we ate more than the Romans are the Judean people.
However, it wouldn't be the only split. As time went on, it became clear that Posadas' wing of the party was steadily gaining influence, but it was also taking some very interesting political positions. More splits in the party would occur. The left was once again divided over the suppression of the Hungarian uprising in 1956 by Soviet troops, which ended up giving us the term tankies in reference to authoritarian communists, people who justify the horrific actions of an authoritarian state if it is believed to represent a socialist cause. Famine? The G word? Nonsense. All Western propaganda. Anyway, the Fourth International was losing hope. Capitalism seemed to be growing ever stronger, while failed revolutions throughout the world began piling up. It seemed that the revolution was getting further and further away from happening. Neither Cuba nor Vietnam had happened yet, so what success they did have was tainted by Soviet-style hyper-authoritarianism or Maoism, who both hated trots. But one man was forever optimistic. In fact, he was positively buoyant, convinced that revolution was just around the corner. And this revolutionary enthusiasm ended up with him developing a strong cult of personality, which would soon form an entire movement. That man was Juan Posadas. Now one logically asks, why? And it is now, dear viewers, that we have reached the fun part of the story. You see, Marxism really is not an ideology per se. Rather, Marxism is a methodology of analysing society, specifically through a materialist scientific breakdown of both history and the economy, as well as defining it along the class struggle. To cut a very, very, very long story short, Marx is possibly the worst prose writer in history. He concludes that capitalism will, due to its internal contradictions, destroy itself, lowering the living conditions to such an extent that the average people will have to transition to a new system, the ideal one being communism via a workers' revolution. Problem was that the developed nations with an educated and skilled population, prerequisites for a self-governing society, were strongly entrenched in the early stages of neoliberal capitalism. This was the bountiful 1950s. The Marshall Plan had kicked off in Europe, while America bought obnoxious cars with wings on the back, ate brand new fast food, while listening to rock and roll. The general populace was fat and happy, while the wealthy made piles and piles of money. Revolution wasn't going to happen. So why was Posadas so confident that revolution was nigh? The answer was the Cold War. Or rather, the not-so-Cold War. The Posadists, as they came to be known, viewed the world through dialectical materialism, the scientific analysis of history, and they drew a pattern between all of the successful revolutions throughout human civilization. Almost every single one resulted from catastrophic material conditions. In fact, Marx himself posits that the impending collapse of capital is a prerequisite for its overthrow, as we mentioned before. And in the modern era, the Soviets and the Chinese managed their revolutions in the worst possible conditions, having done so after a world war followed by a civil war in an impoverished, mostly peasant country, while spreading the revolution to Eastern Europe and throughout Asia by force of arms, war communism. Imperialist wars. That was the key. Imperialist wars weaken a capitalist state to the extent that the following strife, in their aftermath, provides the communists an opportunity to seize power. Now, the collapse of capital is inevitable, says Marx. And as the Posadas movement had also developed a scientific focus throughout the 50s for another reason I will discuss shortly, they also view imperialist wars as an inevitability. and that should the socialist countries of the world continue to pose a serious threat, capitalists and imperialists would wage war to stop them. The issue was, of course, that should NATO fight the Warsaw Pact and China, this would result in nuclear war. But for the Posadists, this wasn't a problem. Oh no. This was a prerequisite. For you see, if nuclear war is inevitable, as given both the evidence and their ideological position it most certainly is, and wars provide a revolutionary opportunity, which up to now they had, then the logical conclusion is nuclear war is not only inevitable, but desirable. As the destruction of capitalist infrastructure, the collapse of global trade, and the immolation of armies, police, and the government in nuclear fire will present a unique opportunity for the common man to rise up and seize power for themselves in a glorious socialist revolution. And given that revolution under the current circumstances won't happen, we should make it so it will happen. We must not be opportunist or reactive. We should be proactive. As Trotsky states in his writings on war, communism, and permanent revolution, the communist struggle must be exported to as many nations as possible to keep revolutionary momentum. Thus, this follows that the socialist countries of the world, the Soviet Union and China, should immediately initiate a nuclear first strike against the imperialist capitalist West. And in the resulting conflagration, the workers shall rise to take their rightful place as masters of the world. As our anthem, the Internationale, says, "From the ashes of the old world shall we forge the new." That's right, fellas. The answer to communist revolution is right in front of us. And honestly, this is quite literally apocalyptically based. The answer was staring us in the face the whole time. We'll just nuke the capitalists. It's an absolutely foolproof plan, with no immediate downsides. I see no problems with this. It's a great plan. With enough canned food and a jacket for the nuclear winter, we're Gucci. Except we're not Gucci, because that's bourgeois capitalist decadence.
Thought so? What? A rev counter?
Yes.
You decadent capitalist pig. Ownership of a rev counter is theft.
This is the colour of a prosthetic limb.
You've got wipers on your headlights.
They don't work.
That's not the point. It's aspirational. Elitist.
Okay, now this is positively crazy. But wait. There's more. I mentioned before that Posadism has developed a focus on scientific advances. Nuclear war, after all, is a very complex subject rooted in what was then the pinnacle of human research. Furthermore, the associated development of intercontinental ballistic missiles coincided with the escalating space race between the United States and the Soviet Union. The exploration and subsequent conquest of space for socialism was therefore an integral part of the Posadist platform, resulting in their political support for the Soviet space program, despite their ideological differences. But there was another aspect for them. There was another aspect to this exploration of space that the Posadists were focused on. For you see, again, this is the 1950s. The height of the UFO craze. Oh yeah, we're going there. Now, while many in the movement were skeptical of these UFO sightings, given their frequency, Posadas felt that he should address the subject in his party platform. Given the size of the universe, the number of stars, and mathematical probability, intelligent life other than us was certain to exist. And the only reason they haven't spoken to us is because we are far too backward to give any notice to them. Why would they care? Why should they talk to us? However, this is not some form of petulant elitism. No, this is intentional. They haven't spoken to us because we have yet to establish a socialist system. To them, we're native tribals. You see, Marxism clearly states that a developed civilization must have left capitalism behind. They must have developed a new dialectic, a new methodology far superior to our own. Therefore, that follows, any alien civilization capable of interstellar travel and interstellar communication must by necessity be a communist society, who would never interfere or conduct imperialism against a native people on an underdeveloped planet. Thus, the socialists of Earth must attempt to commune with these peoples, to seek their aid in solving Earth's problems, and aiding us in the revolutionary struggle. This would be preferable to nuclear war, and it's something that we should pursue. However, They may only ever come to our aid if we are truly in distress, or rather, that the socialist movement is in position to entreat their support. So if they haven't and won't visit us, we must do something to gain their attention. We have to make them notice us. Therefore, the global spike in energy and radiation of thermonuclear war may prove to not only rid us of capitalism, but summon our interstellar comrades to render us aid in our most dire moment of need. But then there comes another issue. How do we talk to them? They must have a method of language or communication far superior to our own, while we can only verbalize to other members of our own species. And it's here that the final piece of the puzzle falls into place. During the 1960s, NASA was grappling with the very same problem, and so they conducted an experiment with dolphins, a very intelligent Earth species with advanced communication, in order to see if they could learn to talk to another life form other than human. The Posadists, who followed science journals and the theoretical discussions of the transhumanist movement very closely, saw these experiments and concurred with their findings. Whales, apes, and other species are the key to our own language enlightenment. We must learn to communicate with the other inhabitants of our planet to pave the way for our own communion with the forthcoming arrival of the space comrades. After all, as the International's revised version so clearly states, freedom is just privilege extended if it's not enjoyed by one and all. So the Posadist movement advocated for environmental causes and the rights of animals, along with attempts to communicate with animals that have demonstrated intelligence. So, to sum up the Posadist program, we nuke the capitalists, use the ensuing power vacuum to seize power and establish world communism, then form a united front with our dolphin comrades to entreat the space comrades for assistance in our time of need. The radiation and energy spike enveloping Earth from the global thermonuclear war, acting like a beacon to show that we are ready for first contact. Genius. However, as you can imagine, this platform began to look more and more ridiculous the longer it went on, and as it went on, so did Juan Posadas' slide into insanity. He became incredibly paranoid, isolated, and tyrannical, even among his own party. He went from commanding a large force of dedicated Latin American communists to a small fringe group more akin to the cults mentioned in the opening of this video. Members were forbidden to have intimate relationships for no other purpose than to produce children, with both marriage and said childbearing having to be authorized by party officials. Homosexuality was banned outright, and LGBT people were persecuted and demonized by the movement as bourgeois capitalist degenerates. His writings began to be more scattered and erratic, while his cult of personality, which had once made him an authority, now made him a callous old curmudgeon, ruthlessly berating his most loyal followers. At the end of the day, his death spelled the end of the movement as a meaningful force, and its members melted away into the various Trotskyist organizations around Latin America. However, his writings, theories, and even the party's website still lives on. And in the wake of the internet meme culture that built up around the 2000s, Posadism has been reborn as a satirical movement, commenting on the depressing state of current events. Every time a major calamity happens, there is a deluge of memes proclaiming that Juan Posadas was right all along, and that the revolution is nigh.
Oh, is that right? Well, I sure hope somebody picks up that phone, because I f***ing called it!
And yet, among all the crazy history and modern neo-Posadist satire, there is a grain of truth in his analysis which I'd like to point out. And you find it in history's most successful, long-running science fiction franchise, Star Trek. Star Trek is essentially proof that Posadas' ideas still hold sway. After a nuclear war, humanity rebuilds, bound together in a struggle for progress, eventually saved by first contact with the Vulcans. And once a united humanity comes into contact with a civilization founded entirely on pacifist logic, we eradicate world hunger, disease, poverty, and war. A post-scarcity democratic society of true equality is born. Fully automated, luxury, gay, space, communism. We go on to found an interplanetary union of peoples based in the idea of peaceful exploration and the guiding of people through the trauma of warp travel and first contact, spreading space communism throughout the galaxy. And when Earth is threatened by its most dangerous crisis, it's not weapons, not the Federation fleet, not even our ideals or values that save us. No, it is the beautiful songs of our cetacean brethren brought back from the brink by our bravest heroes aboard USS Enterprise. It is they that bring peace. Anyway, that is the story of how nuking the planet to save the whales was at one time a legitimate South American communist policy. And in that spirit, I shall leave you with a traditional Posadist farewell. And funnily enough, it comes from the Posadist movement's wisest and most well-known philosopher. He was in his prime a best-selling author whose theories are still quoted widely today. The farewell is this. It sounds like the Star-Spangled Banner, I know, but that language is dolphin, specifically bottlenose dialect dolphin, and it loosely translates as, so long, and thanks for all the fish.
So